Crash-landing the forest erupted in brilliant orange flames as Zara's escape pod tore through the canopy, leaving a trail of smoke and shattered branches in its wake. Emergency klaxons shrieked inside the cramped vessel as she fought to maintain control, her four-fingered hands dancing across alien controls that sparked and failed one by one. "Come on, you worthless piece of scrap metal," she hissed through gritted teeth, her bioluminescent markings flashing rapid patterns of distress across her silver-blue skin. The translation matrix in her neural implant was already working overtime, converting her thoughts into the crude language of this backwater planet. The pod slammed into the earth with bone-jarring force, throwing her against the restraints hard enough to see stars. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines as she struggled to free herself, her pointed ears ringing from the impact. Through the cracked viewport, she could see towering trees and unfamiliar constellations, definitely not Kepler 442b anymore. Her pursuers would be here soon. The Dominion never let escaped prisoners get far, especially not ones who'd stolen classified information about their planned invasion routes. She had maybe 6 hours before their tracking beacons. Locked onto her pod's quantum signature, Zara activated her biomimetic camouflage, feeling the familiar tingle as her skin shifted from its natural iridescent silver blue to a dull pinkish brown. Her luminescent markings faded to nothing. Her elongated limbs compressed slightly, and her large violet eyes darkened to a muddy brown. The transformation was exhausting, but necessary. According to the cultural files, this species called themselves humans, and they weren't known for their tolerance of the unknown. Stumbling from the wreckage, she spotted a structure through the trees, a small dwelling made of wood and stone, smoke rising from its chimney. Her enhanced hearing detected no heartbeats inside, but the scent of recent occupation lingered in the air. The owner was absent, but would likely return. She approached cautiously, her bare feet silent on the forest floor. The lock on the door was primitive, a simple mechanical device that yielded to her enhanced strength with barely a whisper. Inside, she found a rustic but comfortable home filled with the strange artifacts of human civilization. Books with physical pages, photographs printed on paper, furniture carved from actual wood. Her legs finally gave out, exhaustion and pain overwhelming her depleted energy reserves. The transformation was holding, but it wouldn't last forever. She needed rest, medical attention, and most importantly, a place to hide until she could figure out how to get off this planet. The sound of running water from another room caught her attention. Following the noise, she discovered the most wondrous thing: a chamber where heated water fell from the ceiling like warm rain. A shower, the human files called it. After weeks of imprisonment and the crash, the thought of washing away the grime and blood seemed like paradise itself. The discovery: Marcus. Cain had lived alone in the mountains for 3 years, and he liked it that way. The cabin his grandfather had built sat 20 miles from the nearest town, connected to civilization by a single dirt road that became impassable half the year. It was perfect for a man who'd seen too much of what humans could do to each other. He'd gone into Pine Ridge for supplies, canned goods, ammunition, and parts for the water heater that had been acting up. The trip should have taken all day, but old Pete at the hardware store had been chatty, and Marcus had found himself staying for dinner at the diner. Human contact in small doses, he'd learned, was like medicine. Too little and you went crazy. Too much and you remembered why you'd left in the first place. The sun was setting by the time he pulled up to the cabin, his battered pickup truck loaded with provisions. Something felt wrong immediately. The air carried an unfamiliar scent ozone, and something metallic like copper pennies. His military training kicked in automatically, hand moving to the Colt .45 at his hip. The front door stood slightly ajar. Marcus was certain he'd locked it before leaving. He approached carefully, ears straining for any sound of movement inside. The living room appeared undisturbed, but his instincts were screaming danger. 20 years in the Rangers had taught him to trust those instincts. He could hear the shower running. That was impossible. He'd turned off the main water valve before leaving. Standard procedure whenever he'd be gone more than a day. Someone was definitely in his house. Someone who'd somehow gotten the water working. Marcus drew his sidearm and moved toward the bathroom, each step deliberate and silent. The door was closed, steam seeping from beneath it. He could hear movement inside, definitely human sounding, but something felt off. The rhythm was wrong, too graceful, too fluid. His hand closed around the doorknob. In one smooth motion, he turned it and pushed the door open, weapon raised, and ready. Time stopped. The creature in his shower spun toward him, and Marcus felt his worldview shatter like glass. She was humanoid, but clearly not human skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light, markings that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, eyes that held depths he couldn't fathom. Beautiful and alien and utterly impossible. She tried to cover herself, pressing back against the shower wall with a look of absolute terror. Her mouth opened in what might have been a scream, but no sound emerged. Instead, the markings on her skin flared brighter, cycling through colors that had no names in any human language. Marcus felt his gun hand wavering. Every instinct told him to shoot, to eliminate the threat, to protect himself from the unknown. But the look in her eyes, pure animal fear, reminded him of something else. A wounded deer he'd found as a child, trapped in a snare, too hurt to run, but still trying to hide. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his weapon. Then, keeping his movements calm and non-threatening, he took a step backward. "You're safe here," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the running water. "I won't hurt you." The alien girl's eyes widened, and for a moment, something like hope flickered across her face. First Contact Marcus backed out of the bathroom, pulling the door closed behind him. His hands were shaking not from fear, but from the sheer impossibility of what he'd just witnessed. In all his years of military service, all the classified briefings and Black Ops missions, nothing had prepared him for this. He holstered his weapon and leaned against the wall, trying to process what he'd seen. The creature, the woman, had been clearly terrified. Whatever she was, wherever she'd come from, she was hurt and afraid. And she was hiding in his shower. The water shut off abruptly, followed by the sound of careful movement. Marcus grabbed a clean towel from the linen closet and knocked gently on the door. "I'm leaving a towel out here," he called softly. "Take your time." Minutes passed before the door cracked open. A slender hand emerged, snatching the towel before quickly retreating. Marcus waited, giving her space to compose herself. When she finally emerged, she'd somehow changed her skin, had taken on a more human appearance, though he could still see traces of the luminescent markings beneath what looked like sophisticated camouflage. She wore one of his flannel shirts, which hung almost to her knees. Her hair was darker now, but still held an otherworldly quality that made it seem to move independently of any breeze. She stood frozen in the doorway, watching him with eyes that held the wariness of a wild animal. "My name is Marcus," he said, slowly, keeping his voice gentle. "This is my home. Are you hurt?" She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. When she spoke, her voice was melodic but strained, as if the words were unfamiliar in her mouth. "I understand your language," she said, haltingly. "My designation is Zara. I mean no harm to you or your dwelling." Marcus nodded, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. "You're injured," he observed, noticing how she favored her left side. "I have medical supplies." Basic stuff, but it might help. Zara's expression showed surprise. "You would not..." Aid me, even though I am not of your species? You're hurt and scared. Marcus replied simply, "That's enough." Something shifted in her posture, a subtle relaxation that suggested his words had struck home. My vessel crashed in your forest. I was fleeing from those who would see me return to captivity. I sought shelter here, believing it empty. I did not intend to invade your sanctuary. Marcus processed this information, his mind working through the implications. Someone's chasing you? The Dominion, she said, and the way she pronounced the word made it sound like a curse. They will come. They have ways of tracking that your people do not yet understand. I should leave my presence here endangers you. Let me worry about that, Marcus said firmly. Right now, you need medical attention and rest. We'll figure out the rest later. Zara stared at him for a long moment, and he could see her internal struggle. Trust didn't come easily to someone who'd been running for their life. But finally, she nodded. I do not understand your motivations, she said quietly, but I am grateful for your kindness. Marcus smiled, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. Welcome to Earth, Zara. Let's get you patched up. Understanding the next few hours passed in a blur of careful conversation and cautious first aid. Zara's injuries were more extensive, and Marcus had first realized deep cuts along her ribs that sealed themselves with a strange, silver-like substance when cleaned, and burns on her arms that glowed faintly blue before fading. Her biology was clearly different from human physiology, but she seemed to heal faster than should be possible. Your species regenerates quickly, Marcus observed, applying antiseptic to a gash on her shoulder. We are resilient, Zara agreed, wincing slightly at the unfamiliar sensation. We had to be, to survive the wars that consumed our home world. But this form I wear, it is not my true appearance. Maintaining it requires significant energy. Marcus paused in his work. You can change how you look? Biomimetic adaptation, she explained, her voice growing stronger as the pain medication took effect. We evolved it as a survival mechanism, but it is taxing and temporary. As if to prove her point, her carefully maintained human appearance began to flicker. The luminescent markings beneath her skin grew brighter, and her eyes shifted from brown to their natural violet. Marcus found himself staring, not in fear, but in wonder. You don't have to hide what you are, he said quietly. Not from me. Zara's expression showed surprise, then something that might have been relief. Slowly, she allowed the camouflage to drop entirely. Her skin returned to its natural silver blue, the markings along her arms and face pulsing with soft light. She was even more beautiful in her true form alien, yes, but graceful and elegant in ways that human evolution had never achieved. I have never shown myself to another species willingly, she admitted. My people. We were taught to fear contact with others. Too many civilizations see difference as threat. Some humans are like that too, Marcus said honestly. But not all of us. Tell me about this Dominion. What do they want with you? Zara's markings flared brighter, pulsing with what he was beginning to recognize as distress. They are an empire that consumes worlds. They take species that show promise and reshape them into tools. My people were one of their first conquests centuries ago. We became their scouts, their infiltrators. But you escaped. I stole something, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Data about their next targets. Star charts, invasion plans, the coordinates of worlds they intend to harvest. Including this one. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Earth is on their list? Your species has caught their attention. Your adaptability, your resilience, your capacity for both creation and destruction. They want to study you, to understand what makes you unique. But their study will not be gentle. How long do we have? The information I stole suggests they will arrive within your local year. Maybe less if they accelerate their timeline. Zara's markings dimmed with what looked like shame. I thought, I could warn someone, find a way to help your people prepare. But I am just one refugee with stolen data. Who would believe me? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Then he looked at her with a determination she hadn't seen before. You'd be surprised what humans can do when we're properly motivated, he said. We have a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. Maybe it's time your Dominion learned what that means. Zara stared at him, and for the first time since her escape, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found allies worth fighting for. The bond 3 days had passed since Marcus first opened that bathroom door, and everything had changed. Zara had recovered enough to move freely around the cabin, though she still favored her left side where the worst injuries were healing. More importantly, she'd begun to trust him, really trust him, not just the desperate alliance of necessity. She'd shown him the data she'd stolen, projecting holographic star charts from a device no bigger than a coin. The scope of the Dominion's planned invasion was staggering hundreds of worlds, billions of lives, all marked for conquest or harvest. Earth was just one target among many, but seeing his home world highlighted in red made it personal. Your military will need time to prepare, Zara said, manipulating the display to show projected invasion routes. The Dominion's technology is centuries ahead of yours, but your species has advantages they don't expect. Such as? Your unpredictability, she said, with what might have been a smile. Most species follow logical patterns, predictable responses. To threats, humans ... you do not. You will sacrifice everything for those you care about. You will fight when any rational being would surrender. You will find hope in the darkest circumstances. Marcus studied the holographic display, his mind already working through possibilities. We'll need to contact the right people. People who can act on this information without asking too many questions about the source. You believe your government will listen? Some will, others won't. But humans have this annoying habit of pulling together when faced with extinction. He looked at her seriously. The question is, what do you want out of this? You could disappear, find somewhere safe to hide until it's all over. Zara's markings flared brighter, and Marcus had learned to recognize this as a sign of strong emotion. I have spent my entire life running from the Dominion. I have watched them destroy countless worlds, enslave entire species. If there is a chance, even a small one, to stop them, then I will take it. It won't be easy, and it won't be safe. Nothing worthwhile ever is, she replied, and Marcus found himself grinning at how quickly she'd picked up human idioms. Evening, as they sat by the fire planning their next moves, Zara did something unexpected. She reached out and touched his hand, her alien skin warm against his. I need you to understand something, she said quietly. Among my people, trust is not given lightly. We have been betrayed too many times, used too often. But you saw me at my most vulnerable, and your first instinct was to offer safety. That is not common in my experience. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, struck by how natural it felt. I've spent the last 3 years hiding from the world, convinced that people were mostly just sources of disappointment and pain. Then you crashed into my forest, and suddenly I remember why some things are worth fighting for. What happens now? Zara asked. Now we save the world, Marcus said simply. Both of our worlds. And after? Marcus met her eyes, seeing in them the same mixture of hope and uncertainty he felt himself. After, we figure out what comes next. Together, the fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows on the cabin walls. Outside, the forest was quiet, except for the normal sounds of night creatures going about their business. In a few hours, they would begin the long journey to contact the people who could act on Zara's information. They would face skepticism, bureaucracy, and the enormous challenge of preparing humanity for an interstellar war. But for now, they sat in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds who had found something worth protecting in each other. The unlikely bond formed in a moment of vulnerability had become something stronger, a partnership that might just save both their species. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new impossible tasks. But tonight, in a small cabin, in the mountains, a human and an alien girl planned to change the fate of the galaxy. And for the first time in years, Marcus Kane felt truly alive.